Tennessee has already really established itself, at least in the college basketball world, those who are paying attention, with Rick Barnes as the head coach. The brand itself from Tennessee, just in general, is a major one. The Power T is so recognizable. And as much as people like to joke or sometimes not joke about ESPN hating Tennessee, ESPN actually loves Tennessee because they know that people are going to watch if Tennessee's on, and that there is a draw with Tennessee, especially if Tennessee is good. Tennessee in football back at a high level is good for college football. And part of the reason that is said is because it's good for the people that are covering college football. The press box at Neyland Stadium was filled with national media members for the big games because it's a big deal when Tennessee is competing at a high level. And when Tennessee basketball is competing at a high level, is it the same as football? Is it the same as the following of, I mean, we could say Duke basketball, I guess, or Kansas. Maybe not, but the fan base is so big that it's going to hop on board, and that's already happened. And Thompson Bowling Arena ranks high every year in average attendance. And those games against Alabama last year and Texas and Kentucky, the crowds are fantastic because of the following and because of the support for Tennessee. So when Tennessee's playing in these games against Duke and North Carolina, that is attractive not only to the Tennessee fan base, but to everybody covering college basketball and when ESPN is covering.
Yep, it's funny you say that. I've debated a lot of Tennessee fans who talk about the ESPN hate. I think it was there, but I think it's from the 90s. I don't think it exists anymore. I think they realized what they lost when Tennessee football fell off. And I think it had a lot to do with, I'm just going to be honest, I think ESPN and media members in general have a bias to programs whose coaches were good interviews. And Josh, you and I both know Fulmer was not the best interview. He was not an entertaining guy to do press conferences or do one-on-ones with.
Yeah, I mean, there's the Heisman aspect, and I get that with what happened with Charles Woodson and the attention that was put on Michigan. Michigan was winning. I mean, they were a title contender, and that's another major program. So there's that aspect. But some of the names are known, some of them are not, people that work behind the scenes. There's so many UT grads that work for ESPN. So when it's brought up ESPN hates Tennessee, part of my question is, okay, who are you even talking about? Like the upper management of ESPN couldn't care less. They don't care about any of the teams. And then the people that are covering college sports, many of them have graduated from UT or they've been in Knoxville, worked in Knoxville covering Tennessee. So people outside Knoxville would make the opposite argument that there's a bias for Tennessee. It's really neither. It's just that if Tennessee's really good, they get great coverage and they get college game day to town. Like last year, ESPN came to Knoxville twice because they knew how big of a draw it was and how great of a show it would be. So a lot of people would have argued, hey, there's bias for Tennessee. It's not for or against. It's just if Tennessee's really good, they'll get a lot of positive coverage. When Tennessee wasn't so good, which unfortunately was too long of too long of a length of time, well, the coverage was pretty negative, and that was for obvious reason.
Yep, this is actually something I kind of want to transition to because it's a good segue we got to. But thinking about this, it's funny you said that because Chris Fowler had a great point years ago, and it's, we talk about the bias for or against Tennessee or the SEC, and you're right. You go outside the South, everybody thinks that ESPN and everybody's biased in favor of the SEC. And Chris Fowler had a great point. Do you really, like, to people who think there's bias towards the SEC, do y'all really think that ESPN wants college football to be this regional? Of course they don't. They think it's way better for them if the Pac-12 and the Big Ten and the ACC and the Northeast are having teams competing for the national title. They would obviously much rather that happen where they could stretch their market value of covering college football than just be stuck in the South, wouldn't they?
Yeah, probably so. I mean, if you can get USC to be a big deal, if you can have more Big Tens that are competing at a high level, Big Ten teams that are competing at a high level, and they have a big contract with the SEC. So they're not rooting against SEC teams. They don't want them to be bad. It's just, this is not a Tennessee thing, by the way. Arkansas fans think that the media hates their team, and USC and UCLA fans think that the media is out to get their teams. And same for Michigan and Ohio State. I promise you look through Ohio State message boards and they think that the national media is against them. And Georgia will say that even though they're winning national titles and getting all kinds of coverage. So that's just, I think that's human nature. But I'll ask again, when we say ESPN is against Tennessee in this case, who on earth are we even talking about? I don't know. Like, is there one person that might have an axe to grind? I guess, but that could happen anywhere. So it's not really a thing. If Tennessee's really good, which Tennessee is right now, they're going to get a lot of really positive coverage. The Friday before the Georgia game this past fall, during my show that afternoon, we went to ESPN.com because there was a story we knew of on Tennessee, and we looked, and there were 5 front page stories, all in a positive light, related to Tennessee, and 1 or 2 of them might have been Tennessee and Georgia, but it was a positive light on Tennessee. Why? Because Tennessee was really good. So when Tennessee's really good, they'll get really positive coverage. If Tennessee's not good, which is not the case for any of the teams right now, then the coverage will be more negative. It really comes down to how good or bad they are.
Exactly. The only pushback I have seems to be biased for Florida State in football because I don't understand how people can think they're a top 10 team this year. But that's just me.
Well, I mean, they might be. We'll see. If they beat LSU in that opener, then playing in the ACC will give them a really good chance. The short answer would be they might have one of the best quarterbacks in the country. They have a guy that would have gone in the first round coming back as an edge rusher in Jared Verse, who chose Florida State over Tennessee. If Tennessee had him, talk about the conversation that would change with Tennessee's defense. So I don't know if Florida State's quote back, but they're one of those teams I'm most curious to see. That LSU Florida State game is going to be one of the best early games of the season.
Josh, I want to do. We have peer-to-peer betting coming with Zen Sports. I'm going to bring them up in a minute, but I will do a peer-to-peer bet with you right now if we could, which is I'm setting the line at 15, and I think LSU covers. I'm that high on LSU and that low on Florida State this year.
Okay. I mean, maybe so. Last year, Florida State beat them in one of the wildest games where LSU almost came back and won, and that was a great game. So what was the number you just said?
I said it at 15. I think it's a different LSU team. So I set the line at 15.
Yeah. If you want to revisit close to game time, we can, but I'll take that line right now.
All right, let's do it. We'll do this, Josh.
Yeah. Okay.